What if you were building a provider not for profit? Techsoup is a not for profit focused on the technology space and on helping other not for profits. Let's talk to Michael Enos, community lead there, and learn more. This is a bonus episode of The Business of Tech. Michael, thanks for joining me today.
It's great to be here.
So I'm super curious to talk about Techsoup. But before that, I think it's important to give our listeners and watchers a sense of who you are and how you ended up here. So you want to give us the kind of quick version of how you got through your career and how you ended up here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, since the 90s, I've been working in tech in the civil society sector. Originally in the social work programs, and then moving into food security. And in that capacity, I worked with Techsoup and watched it grow, and was very close to it, and received numerous benefits from Techsoup in both education resources and product donations. And I became very curious, and so I actually approached Techsoup and said at some point, "Hey, I'd like to work for you. I think you do great value in the community, and I'd like to work for an international organization." To expand, the work that I'm doing in the tech sector and civil society. So, and they took a chance and hired me, and I've been here for 8 years now. And I run most of our infrastructure, IT operations, but I also am sort of a community face of Techsoup when it comes to technology. Oftentimes doing things like this, webinars, and help do blog posts and things to help educate the civil society sector in the areas where we really believe they can improve operational capacity at using tech.
So let's then ask the obvious next question. Well, what is Techsoup?
Essentially, it's a global civil society organization. We are a nonprofit in the U.S. We are affiliated with partners globally that are essentially kind of like, they're branded as Techsoup in most cases, and through these channels in different regions worldwide, we essentially try to improve the operational and technical capacity of organizations so that they could better fulfill their mission. That's essentially, and in the effort to improve equality, equity, and and also to just try to create a better infrastructure for civil society organizations. And so that's what we do, and we do it through a very, very large network of groups worldwide. And we also partner with the private sector technology corporations primarily, like large ones such as our relationship with Google and Facebook and Sales. And all these large organizations essentially distribute their philanthropic wing uses us as their vetting suppliers so that they can understand who should receive the benefit of their philanthropy throughout the world. And so we're sort of at the connector. So we're sort of a convener between the private sector, private tech sector, and who are interested in civil society and those civil society organizations, and not just connecting them, but connecting them to each other so that they could then benefit from each other. So we're sort of like a multi-sided platform that way, where we sort of can connect people from all different places, and we have platforms globally. We're in every single country except for the embargoed states, and we have offices worldwide that are both Techsoup offices, but also our partner affiliates. That's a little bit in a nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things, so I will say, I worked with Techsoup when I was a provider, and one of the things that I think you're known best for is the product catalog, essentially.
Yep.
The ability to get those not-for-profits and civil-based organizations access to technology that those big vendors are trying to make available through philanthropy.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about how that program works and what it is.
Yeah. So at the core of what Techsoup does is you can kind of say we're a vetting supplier. So what we do is we reach out to organizations, and they reach out to us, and we vet them and ensure that they are who they say they are, that they are a legitimate organization, that their mission is in line with the kinds of things that organizations that are philanthropic, who want to give donations of technology, services, and product, and we essentially, we validate them. So most of what we do is we call it validation services. We validate organizations, and then we can kind of put a TechSoup stamp of approval. So if you go to, for example, Google for Nonprofits, and you go through that process, you'll see that it's powered by TechSoup. And that's us doing all that back-end work for Google. And we do the same thing for Microsoft. We are vendor agnostic because we believe everybody has something to give to the civil society sector. And so, essentially, that's what people do. And the benefit, it's billions of dollars of benefit to the community. And when it comes down to the dollar value of what they're saving, when you look at the numbers worldwide, it's astronomical. And we, our business model is interesting because what we do is we kind of just, have an admin fee for the processing and for our own operations, so that we could do this.
So that leads to the next obvious question. So you're a not-for-profit. What is the business model behind TechSoup? How do you keep the doors open for yourselves?
Essentially, when we create a partnership with an organization, and such as Microsoft or Google or PagerDuty or New Relic or whoever that organization is, Facebook, Slack, we negotiate sort of a deal essentially, which says, okay, either it's something transaction based or it's oftentimes based on an admin fee, and it depends on the type of service and what we're providing, and then we negotiate that. And so during that transaction, we have some fee that's associated to us processing that transaction, but also to pay for our administrative costs or overhead, our marketing, and all the things that we do, and also other types of services such as our outreach and the things that we don't charge NPOs for, our blogs or these things. But we also have done we've branched out to a lot more types of business lines of business. So oftentimes what we're doing now is we're also doing courses. So we have courses where people could go and learn about, I do a deeper dive than just what you see in one of our webinars or blog posts. We also have, we're starting to launch a membership model called Quad, where, with a membership fee, you get a subscription that essentially gets you really enriched TechSoup content, services, and deeper discounts on the product donations. So we have a number of different lines of business. One of our very successful sort of growing lines of business is a program we call NGO Source. And that's essentially an equivalency determination system where we work with organizations outside of the U.S. to give them sort of a 501c, what would be the equivalent of a 501c3 stamp of approval, so that they can get donations from places like the Ford Foundation or the Bill Gates Foundation, because that's required for them to be able to receive those. So they get our sort of legal stamp of approval that they meet the same qualifications that a U.S. org would. And that's a really growing line of business for us. And we charge the, both sides of the coin that, because the people who are investing in this, in wanting that organization are really interested in making sure it's going to the right people.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. So I want to ask, because it's right there on your website, there's a section for get the help you need, and it's actually interesting to me as putting my provider hat on there, because there's one set of buttons for managed IT and help desk, but another for consultant connection. Help me understand what you guys are doing in the services space. Are you delivering it? Are you partnering it? Is it a mix of both?
Mostly we partner it. We are developing more internal sort of resources to do direct consultation with some more, in some capacity through a customer success program, specifically around, ensuring that people are leveraging product donations, like, if they get Microsoft Office or Microsoft 365, or if they need some help implementing. We offer some light services like that, but mostly we outsource to some other companies that then can really do that sort of engagement. And so that's another way that we connect. It's just another, and the organizations that we work with who do the service delivery are also focused on the civil society sector. They're usually not just, consultants or organizations who are just, usually working for Forbes 500 companies. They're usually used to the sector, which is really helpful because the sector is really unique. The needs of it is unique. The budgetary constraints are unique. The training and resources are unique. And so having that sort of knowledge and having the consistency of working in the sector helps if you're in the capacity of providing services.
Gotcha. Which leads to kind of an obvious question for an IT services MSP listener. Like, are you guys competitive to what they do? Are you looking to partner with them? What's TechSoup's perspective on that?
Well, I think that uh, we'd actually like to partner with them more. To be quite
Okay.
honest with you, I think that it's not. We don't really see competition in our space is more related to people who also would then be doing like be try to be the middle person for between philanthropy and the tech sector, right? So and there are a few organizations like that. So really, we try to get to those organizations first and say, look, if you want to engage in philanthropy and you want to use your tech product or tech services to engage in philanthropy, do philanthropic work, we're the ones to do it through because we have the largest footprint worldwide to do that with, and we can have the farthest reach and impact. And that that's really helpful for a CSR, a corporate social responsibility wing of an organization, especially the large ones, because they can go back and say, look, this is the benefit of our, to the stakeholders and say, look, this is what we're doing. This is our triple bottom line. And so oftentimes what we're going for is like, look, a lot of stakeholders want to see more of that triple bottom line in an organization, not just the bottom line in terms of how much, dividends I'm going to get. And they say, well, what's your impact? Especially now with all the things that have been happening recently in terms of increased global conflict, climate change. People want to give, and they want to know how to give, and that includes the people who are the stakeholders and also the people who work at these large tech organizations. They want to know what can we do? Sitting where I'm sitting, what can I do? So
Right.
we tap into that.
Gotcha. So I've got two follow-up questions. I'll dive in on
Sure.
the first. So is how are you guys helping them measure that? How do you help them measure that impact?
Good question. So we've developed over the years some types of surveys and assessment tools to essentially gauge what we call sort of through a technical maturity model. Because what we're interested in knowing is how well are we doing? It's not just a measure of how much stuff people get or how many services they get from us, because that's just one number. What we want to know is, well, what did that actually do to help them with their impact, and also help them be able to improve their operational capacity to exploit the use of the technology better to further their mission. And so we've developed survey tools and engagement tools to understand over time how they're kind of growing along that maturity curve and if they're becoming a more technically mature organization. And there's very interesting ways to sort of understand that through just simple survey assessments and tools. But it's also helpful because then we get an idea of what they need next after they've implemented some of the basic things to get the building blocks of their technology together. What do they need next? We help them on that journey so that then they can move up through that model. And that's very useful for us because that's something that I've worked with very small nonprofits and very large ones, and they're all different places on that sort of spectrum. And if you can understand where an organization is on that spectrum, you could better serve them and actually be more impactful.
Gotcha. So that portion of what you guys are doing is very much a consultation engagement, correct?
Somewhat, yeah. It's almost more like an assessment sort of thing. Sort of like if you were to go to the doctor for a physical annually. It's like, well, how are you doing this year? Although generally with physical, you do worse over time. But with this, what we're hoping to see is people doing better over time.
Right. Okay. Now the other area of follow up that I wanted to understand is we've kind of mixed two things, and I want to make sure I don't confuse people. Particularly when a company like Microsoft or Google or Adobe does giving, they're generally focused on product giving. Is that fair? Or are they
No,
doing services?
they no, and it's mostly because they actually most cases don't actually do service delivery themselves, and they outsource that to an implementation provider. And so I mean, when
Gotcha.
TechSoup is a large organization, so currently when we implement the larger systems that we use internally to run our business, we don't, even though we work some arrangement out with the organization, we're like everybody else. They don't say, oh, we'll implement it for you. It's like they say these are some certified partners that'll help you implement this, and those are the people who. So it's generally like, although there have been situations, at least in the past, where a local technology firm may donate like volunteers from their group. I mean, there are, for example, specifically some really cool organizations like New Relic that actually has a pro bono week, where what they do is they dedicate a week of their time for all of their staff to work with an organization to help better implement New Relic, which is an observability operations tool, essentially. And so they spend a week with an organization just helping them do that. So there are cases like that. And those are the organizations we really like to work with, because it provides that extra value, the value added service when they actually, use that product, and they're getting more impact out of it.
Well, that was where I was going with follow, because I was trying to separate the product from those
Sure.
companies that are delivering services. And, particularly because most of my audience is going to be focused on the services side of that. What I'm trying to get to here then is like, what are the opportunities for them to work with a Techsoup, versus an area where you may overlap? Like, what are you looking for from the service providers who do those software implementations to work with a Techsoup?
Well, I think that, a great way for those connections to happen is sometimes where the service, what we found is where the service providers sort of, their origin of business, like where do they sort of operate out of? And then to engage, or for you, like where are you, or in your communities? And there are, within all communities are, nonprofit organizations that could use the help of MSPs. And if they work with us, we could help guide them in terms of like, hey, this is what this organization really needs and how to implement it. And they could be more successful, which could then, for the MSP, basically, or the implementation provider, could provide continued business because they'd be happy with the services and actually will refer other people. And oftentimes the people who work in nonprofits actually have businesses, they're volunteering, right? So they're like, oh my God, this great implementation partner came in and helped us implement, helped us migrate from on-premise, Exchange to cloud Exchange, and they helped us do that. And now I'm going to refer them all my other business friends, right? And so maybe they'll hopefully do that with some understanding that organizations in the sector can't afford as much and they'll provide some sort of a discount of some for them. And so we do try to reach out to those organizations. We do have that consultant connection program that we're really trying to develop exactly for that purpose. But that is, I think, a great way for them to engage, and also to, but I think oftentimes that stuff happens, on the ground in those communities, because that's where the relationships develop. And also, I think that's where, unless it's a very, very large, group like Accenture or something like that, that is, but those, even those we work with and try to help connect the dots with organizations, to help them, connect organizations to them. And we do have, connections in some of those, those larger ones, but not the smaller local ones, of course.
Right. So for those providers that aren't necessarily familiar with the not-for-profit and service space, what's the one thing you wish they knew about this space as they were trying to understand it?
I mean, I think that there's sometimes some misconceptions, okay? I mean, oftentimes people, will think that the nonprofit sector is not well organized, or they're not run by business-minded people, or they're not, because it's called nonprofit, that they're not business-oriented. All the nonprofits I worked for are very business savvy, and have, business backgrounds, and oftentimes they do this because they want to be impactful, and they want to use their business skills to be impactful. And sometimes they're volunteers who do it, or people who were in the sector and they left the private sector to work in the public nonprofit sector because they were not satisfied in their work. So I think there's a lot of, and sometimes, people will think that, well, they're not going to really be helpful in helping me be successful in implementation. I think what people sometimes really need to know is that there's really, really smart people running this social fabric, from the nonprofit sector, and they're really good at what they do, and they're dedicated, and they're also business minded, so they'll be like, this is a charity organization, how are you going to help your community? So you have to be prepared for that, and I think that what they should know is that, I think having some skin in the game is good, but even maybe that means like volunteering, doing something else for the organization other than just what they're doing for the business side.
So, Michael, if a provider was looking to get involved and get involved with the consultant connection and working with Techsoup, how's the best way for them to do that?
We have contact information on our website at techsoup.org. And the best thing to do is to send us an email through that contact information. Now, you can reach out to me directly, and I can point anybody to the right people at TechSoup. I know that my information will be associated with this. I would absolutely do that, but you could also, there's information broadly on our TechSoup platforms.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Dave. This has been a pleasure, and thanks for all the listeners out there.
Thanks for your time and attention. Time is a finite resource, and I really value you giving me some of yours. If you like this video, you can let me know with a like of the video, and even more valuable, hitting the subscription button. My content is all free, and I use metrics like subscriptions to pay the bills, so it has real value. The content here is produced under ethics guidelines posted at businessof.tech. If you're interested in more content like this, you can get access to content early via our Patreon at patreon.com/MSPradio. It's our give what you want model where you set the value of what you think the content is worth. If you like this podcast, you can catch it daily as the 5-minute news and commentary show, The Business of Tech, available on all your favorite podcatchers with links at businessof.tech. Just hit that big blue button to subscribe. Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen, and I really value the interaction. If you want to say something in the comments, I do respond and watch all that, and I look forward to talking to you next time.